Hello students, we're continuing our discussion of nerve physiology and how neurons are able to create electrical impulses and how those electrical impulses travel down the axon. And so we're going to be looking at this action potential. Again, I want you to think of an action potential essentially as an electrical impulse. And in order to create that electrical impulse, we have to go back to this separation of charges that we talked about in the previous lecture. Remember, at rest, a neuron has a separation of charges with the positive charges on the outside and the negative charges on the inside. Now, if I flip those charges, I will flip the voltage. And if I flip the charges back, I'll flip the voltage the other way. And it's that flipping of the voltage and then the consistent unidirectional flipping of the voltages down the length of the axon that ultimately creates this electrical impulse, creates the action potential. So let's try and take a look at it. Here I have here's the membrane of a neuron. Here's the outside of the neuron. Notice all the positive charges on the outside of the neuron. Here is the inside of the neuron. And notice all the negative charges on the inside of the neuron. And of course that creates the resting membrane potential, that creates the electrical charge in the neuron, which we measure at about minus 70 millivolts. Now let's see what happens when we flip these charges. When I flip the charges, all of a sudden, the membrane voltage in that particular area moves from minus 70 up to plus 30 millivolts. Now, that action potential, then it's going to move down the neuron of the axon, and it's going to move down. What's related to that movement of that action potential is the flipping of the charges. So if I flip the charges in the next area, in the next adjacent area, now the action potential has moved down the axon. The original area, the previous area, the charges have flipped back, so that's back at minus 70. And now this new area is plus 30 millivolts. And that action potential the action potential is the flipping of the charges. When the charges flip, that creates this action potential. That creates this blip. It creates this electrical impulse. And as the charges flip, moving down the axon, that creates the movement of the action potential. And you can see here, the action potential just moves down along the axon. I want to kind of replay this one more time. So here I am at rest. Now the charges flip. I create an action potential. The next adjacent charges flip. The action potential moves down the axon. The adjacent charges after that flip. The action potential moves down that region. And then finally the charges flip again, and the action potential continues to move down the axon. So the basis of that action potential, the basis of the electrical impulse, what creates the electrical impulse in the axon is the flipping of these charges. And when the charges flip, that causes a brief change in the voltage. That is that electrical impulse. And that electrical impulse will move down the axon. And again, that's associated with adjacent areas in front of the axon, constant flipping of the charges of the area of the neuron in front of the action potential. Thank you.